Hi, welcome to Broads and Modern Gods. I'm John.
And I am Richard.
And welcome to the show. We've got a good one for you today. We don't cover it a lot, so we thought we would do so with our favorite Golden Age comic books. What do we like from the golden, olden, moldy days of comics? It's not something that I really associate with this podcast, but Richard and I both have dipped our toe several times into this era, and we never really talk about it. So we're going to cover that today. We also have our underrated books of the week and our 25-year-old book, which, a little teaser, is our hot book of the week. Richard, you're not familiar with this book at all, are you?
Until the news broke about this, I had no idea about this book.
It is Xero #1. Now, Xero #1. This was a book that came out in 1997 from DC Comics, but it was pretty much creator owned by Christopher Priest, the writer. It is the first appearance of Xero, a black basketball player who moonlights as a mercenary while disguised as a white man.
Oh, that had to have been an awesome pitch.
Here's the thing about Priest. He's one of my favorite writers. I loved his run on, Black Panther. He did the Marvel Knights relaunch back then. That's where I really got into him. He had done some Spider-Man stuff. He wrote Spider-Man versus Wolverine, that one shot. He was responsible for killing Ned Leeds. And he's just a great writer. His stuff, it's like a really good TV show where you can't watch it while on your iPhone. You really have to pay attention. There's a lot of subtle detail. There's a lot of witty dialogue. If you are not reading it like an Alan Moore book, you're missing a lot. And because it was so detail oriented and because it was so important that these details be followed, it was thoroughly botched by DC's incompetence, according to Priest. You can check out his side of the story. We'll have a link in the description. It's a great read if you want to read about some office politics and some backstabbing, and it's really good. It's juicy. Now, Priest regained the rights to Xero back a few years ago, and now it's been optioned by 50 Cent's production company. Don't get too excited. We'll explain why in a second. This has people fired up. It's driving prices of raws of Xero #1 up to $75 for a raw copy. This is a $1 book 3 weeks ago.
Right.
While this did have a lower print run of #1, had a print run of 19,001 copies. It had an unknown character in 1997. 1997, we're in a slump. So there are some scarcity aspects to this book. It is scarce. However, I would not recommend splashing out $75 to grab one. The G-Unit production company from 50 Cent hasn't had the best luck in getting movies that do well. They end up, back in the day, we used to say direct to video. Now it's direct to, I don't know, Roku. He's had some success with the TV series Prophet, but that's really about it. So my recommendation on Xero, it's a great read. If you want to, it's a great read. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. If you can find it cheap in a back issue bin, somebody's not aware of what it is, great. Otherwise, I'm going to give you a big pass on this.
Oh, this is going to be, I'm sure people can easily find this in the back issue bin. I too would not pay $75 for it. Unless you're, unless you're a big fan, it's a mint copy. You want to get it slabbed. You're a 50 Cent fan or you're a fan of the character. Of course, buy it. But if you're looking at buying a book as a speculation piece, I just don't see enough weight behind it to be worth $75.
I will say Christopher Priest, once again, one of my favorite writers. He's up there with, Steve Gerber and all the other people I talk about on this podcast. Haven't talked a lot about Priest, but he is a polarizing figure. I think he would be proud of that. He is the kind of guy who really should have gotten a shot at big time characters and never really did. I think he might be a little too smart for the room, which is a shame. But more about that later. But right now, let's move on to our main topic, our favorite Golden Age comic books. Stuff that, I don't know, Richard, what's the criteria here? Just stuff that you and me like?
Yes. I mean, it's like you said, it's not a topic that we normally cover. We both have some things that we like in Golden Age, but the focus of this show is, Silver Age onwards. So this is something that, books that we've talked about or books between ourselves or books that we really find appealing.
It's not golden and modern gods.
Yeah, right.
It is bronze and modern gods, but we're going to hit the golden age today. Why don't you start us off with your first book, which I don't think will surprise anyone in the room?
Not a single person. My first book is the only Golden Age book that I have a couple small ones, but this is the real one. Marvel Family Comics #1 from 1945. This is the first appearance of Black Adam. Black Adam is actually, this is a hot book now because of the movie. I have a lot of excitement around The Rock and his portrayal of Black Adam in the upcoming movie. He really, 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 really seems to be into the role, and The Rock doesn't do things halfway. So I'm really excited about that. This book is pretty darn expensive now, but because I think of all that heat. There was a 9.6, which is the highest graded on the census from the Promise collection
So
that
it wasn't a
sold last.
9.6.
Pardon?
So it wasn't a 9.6.
That's a whole nother
All
conversation.
right, go ahead.
Sold for $186,000.
Mm.
Um, finding this book in that grade is just difficult, regardless of what you feel about the Promise collection. I have a measly 3.5, and
It's nice. It's not
yeah,
mean.
it's nice. It's nice. It's a great looking book for a 3.5. There hasn't been any sales of 3.5s in the census since May of 2016. The last 4.0 sold for $10,800 last year.
Is that
So
all?
yeah, that's all. And I have, I see this book continuing to go up in value. I think there's a lot of room in there to grow. We won't see the movie until later this year, and we will see more trailers and I think more buzz and more excitement about the character. And I don't see this being a one and done for DC. If The Rock does a good job and this character ends up being a strong character, I could see this character, because Black Adam is more powerful than Superman. I
Mm.
could see something happening with this character. So I am really excited.
It's interesting that a 4.0 is 10K. I mean, that just shows you guys how much the market has expanded in
Right.
the last 2 years. And I don't think Golden Age is going to have the dip that we're seeing in other areas. And another example is my first book, and that is Venus number 18. Now,
Another not surprising book.
exact. Well, I bet you guys were all waiting for me to say Venus number 19, which is it gets all the glory because of that cover of her getting
Mhm.
ready to make out with a skull. But this one is just as cool. I love the green robed skeletons pointing to the guy in the boat, the little canoe there. And you've heard me talk about chasing a Venus run about 15 years ago. I was very close. I think I was missing 2 books of the 19 issue run. And I had a really nice copy of number 18 at the time. I think it was, I'm not going to exaggerate, I think it was an 8.5.
Wow.
Of course, they're all gone now, but I'm having a rebuilding year, as they say in baseball. Baseball coaches like the Indians, or what are they called now? The champions.
I no
I
comment.
love the fact you don't know your hometown team's new name.
I don't. I don't.
It's the Guardians. I'm
Guardians.
wearing the shirt. Come on. But I'm having a rebuilding year, just like the Guardians. Now, a 4.5 sold last June for $4,560 for a 4.5. Golden Age is not cheap,
No.
but it's just really cool. All right, what's your next one?
My next one is this one I picked because of the cover.
Mhm.
I just can't stop looking at it. It's Mass Comics #1. It has an amazing LB Cole cover. It's a black background with a monkey holding a candle,
Sure.
yeah, but the colors are just so spectacular. There's reds and yellows and greens, and it's just striking. It's also mainly a black cover, so it's also devilishly hard to find in higher grades because this book was published a million years ago. But this is a timeless pre-code horror key, and if you when they do show up, they go for good money. An 8.5 in the Promise collection 102,000 in 2021. A 1.8, which is more around my range, it sold for $4,000 in 2020. There are a couple of copies up on eBay. They are not cheap. I think there's a 1.8 up there right now for 4 grand.
Ooh,
No, it's a 1.0 for 4 grand. That's right.
wow.
And yeah, it's just it's not a cheap book, but it's one of those covers. When you think of golden age, I think you think of one of these. This particular cover is one of those examples.
Coming up, I used to buy the Overstreet Price Guide every year from Walden Books, and then,
Mhm.
I'd have to save up because it was 10.95, so I'd have to save my allowance and my newspaper delivery money, and they always used to have this cover, like, posted, in the listings, and I would look at it, and I never really understood what it was going on, until, adulthood. Not only is it a monkey holding a candle, but you've got, like, human beings as moths being drawn
Yeah,
to the candle and falling like they've been, burnt by the flame. Ooh,
it's awesome cover. It really
it
is.
it is a great cover. Not so great, cover-wise, but an interesting book that I like a lot anyway is Astonishing Number 6. Now, Astonishing started off as a book called Marvel Boy.
Mhm.
Marvel Boy, who was designed in costume, was later used for a guy named Quasar, who we're all familiar with. Issue 3 of Marvel Boy became Astonishing. The title changed to Astonishing, but it was still nothing but Marvel Boy stories. Not sure why the title change was necessary. Maybe Martin Goodman at Atlas thought that Astonishing was going to move a little better. However, with issue 6, poor Marvel Boy is even kicked off the cover. Inside, it's all Marvel Boy stories still, except for one short horror story, which was used as the basis for this cover. It's called The Coffin. Um, After this issue of Astonishing, that was all she wrote for Marvel Boy until the 1970s when he was revived in the Fantastic Four as the Crusader. Now, a 4.5 of this book, which I used to own, sold for $492 last April. I wish I knew about that. I would have been all over a 4.5 of this book for under 500 bucks
Mhm.
for sure. So I guess I just have to keep my eyes open. Um, Purple robe. I had green robe guys last cover. This one's a purple robe guy with little crab hands. See his little crab hands, little lobster hands, little lobster claws.
You like those robes, don't you?
I don't know what's going on here. She's in a glass coffin, about to go into a whirlpool, while a purple robed dude with a really cinched waist. Good job on the waist. Um, in lobster claws is menacing over her. But all right. By the way, I've had this book, I've read it. That story has nothing to do with what's on the cover. That
Of course
cover
not.
is a completely made up situation and scenario.
Of course not.
What do you have next?
My next book is it's all Negro Comics #1 from 1947. This is a book I would love to be able to get to add to my collection. It's just so hard to come by. It's the first comic fully produced by African Americans, and if you get an opportunity, read the Wikipedia entry about the all Negro Comics. It's fascinating. The characters that who backed who made this particular comic. Only one single issue was produced, and that's because the publisher couldn't buy any more newsprint. And according to one writer, it was because the Evans, the man who was producing the book, was blocked from doing it from prejudiced distributors. So there's only one issue of this particular book. It's a rare book. It rarely comes up for sale on eBay. It's insanely hard to get in higher grades.
Right.
Um, and the print run is unknown. There really isn't any records of what the print run is, so it's an anomaly. There are only 40 copies of this book on the census, and there is one lone 9.6 being the highest. It has not shown up on the census for sale in the past few years, so I have no numbers on it. An 8.0 sold in 2021 for $21,000.
Wow.
Um, and there's a 1.0 on eBay right now for about 4 grand. Which if it wasn't tax time, I might think about picking up. But no, it's to me, it's just a piece of history, comic history, and as well as African American history. I would really love to find a copy as part of the permanent collection, you know, that would grow for the rest of my life.
Yeah, for sure. Now, there's a couple things about this book. Number one, a 9.6 exists. How?
Yeah.
How? Was it a file copy from George Evans or man? And number two, talk about a book with everything stacked against it. You have the prejudice at the time, you've got printing problems, 15-cent price tag, because I'm
Oh, that's
sure,
right. Hmm.
yeah, I'm sure he had to charge more to justify, the lower print run, but then distributors are looking at a 15-cent book and going, that's not going to sell. Why are you doing this? Probably got zero distribution in the South, I'm going to
Right.
guess. So, wow. The fact that this still exists as an artifact is amazing. So,
Yeah, you think about 1947 was a different world
yeah,
from what we live in now, and the fact that they were able to publish this book and pass down the history of comic, um, the comic art form to our generation. It's just fascinating, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's a very, very important book.
have you read it?
No, I have not.
There's a story, a lead story of the lead character. You can see him on the front cover. First of all, it's a mashup of all the characters on the
Mhm.
cover. They're all separate stories, but there's a detective, African American detective, and it's like a
Mhm.
15-page hard boiled detective story.
Yes, it's Harlem something, I can't remember.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Mhm.
All right. Talking about books that we like just for the cover. Here we go. Here's the big daddy, Captain America's Weird Tales, number 74.
I'm surprised you didn't go for Cap 1.
Yeah, well, I'm still on planet Earth.
Okay.
I'm keeping my dreams. What's that saying from Jerry Blank on Strangers with Candy? If you're gonna reach for the stars, reach for the lowest one possible. Classic Red Skull cover by Marty Nodell. Very scarce book. Now, great cover, right? Menacing, awesome. Despite that great cover, the only Cap appearance in this issue is a 6-page story where Cap falls asleep in costume in his easy chair at home, like you do when you're a
Oh,
superhero.
oh, yeah.
And he wakes up to find himself in hell thanks to the dead Red Skull. Now, no spoilers, but there's a slight chance this story was a dream.
Okay,
Like a
good.
very slight chance that Cap fell asleep and had a dream about going to hell and fighting the Red Skull. I'll let you read the story yourself. Um, Hugely expensive book now. It was always expensive, but not like it is now. This sucks because here we go again. I once owned a 2.5 that I paid just over 1K for. I bought it from someone on eBay that lived in Canada. And I remember it was the most I spent on eBay at the time. And I was chewing my fingernails waiting for it to come because there was no tracking because it was from Canada. And it actually arrived intact and nice. And it was everything it was advertised to be. So what I do, I pressed it, slabbed it, sold it a few years ago.
Oh, instant
It was,
regret?
there were tougher times then, Richard.
Mhm.
A point 0.5 incomplete copy sold just last month for the bargain price of $5,995.
For a point 0.5.
Incomplete.
Oh, wow.
So, this is a book that I may not own again, but I want it. I want to.
Yeah, never say never.
Never say never. What are your favorite Golden Age titles? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you guys. And maybe we will have a viewer mail episode someday again. We will, trust me. But right now, it is time to come towards the future from 1947
Oh,
to 1997 for
wow.
the 25-year rule. Yes, the 25-year rule, where we focus on books from 25 years ago, 1997. And it is a first, Richard.
Yes, yes.
Our hot book of the week is also our 25-year rule book of the week. Strange how that works out. I'm not being lazy. I just thought it was cool. Seriously, though, going back to Xero, if you can snag a run of Xero, it is an interesting read. I saw a few complete runs sell on eBay over the last couple of weeks for under $150.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I'm not sure if that's still going to be the case or what kind of grade they're in. But if you're just looking to score a run and you want it, do it for that price because um, it's a great read. Based on all the behind the scenes office drama alone, it's worth investigating to count all the errors and continuity lapses and miscolorings and misplaced word balloons. Christopher Priest, in his essay that we link to in the description, says that he is convinced not one person in the DC Comics editorial offices was reading the book. No one. They were just moving paper from one desk to another. Now, just so we're not completely cheating here on the 25-year rule, I suggest grabbing a copy of issue number 12 if you can. That was the last issue, and it definitely has the lowest print run of the series with a whopping 5,180 copies printed.
Wow. What a sabotage job. I find it hard to believe that the professional level of the editorial staff could sink that low.
Well, read the essay and judge for yourself. He tells a little story at the beginning how the powers that be told him before the book even came out that it was the worst comic he had ever read. And Priest said, well, okay, I own the rights. Let me go shop it somewhere else. If you're not into it, let me have it back. Let me take it to Wildstorm or whatever. And they said, absolutely not. We committed to doing this and we're going to do it.
Oh, wow.
So nothing like working with people that believe in you. Time for our underrated books of the week. Richard, I see what you got there. Your favorite cover.
Yes. Oh, okay. So this is My book is Amazing Spider-Man #1 from 1963. No, this is the Golden Record reprint from 1966. It is a reprint of Amazing Spider-Man #1. And like I said, it was printed in 1966, just a few years after the original. It has no price on it. It has no issue number on it on the cover. You could use those to distinguish it. And the back cover is an ad for the Golden Records. So it's it looks similar to ASM #1, and it sure as hell is not priced similar to
No.
it. I think that's the big key here. If you want a book that looks like Amazing Spider-Man #1, and you don't want to pay $30,000 for the book in a 2.0, for example. This book gives you the same patina as the original. I mean, it ages just as well, and it's just a great looking book. It's one of those things where I'm not a huge fan of the cover, but I am a huge fan of Spider-Man, and I decided that this book is starting to go up in value as the original starts to approach the price of a small house for a copy. People are looking for alternatives, and the price for this particular book has gone up significantly in the past year. And if you look at the sales over the past year, for example, it's a graph going slowly upward. So I decided that I wanted a copy of this book, and now is the time to get a copy because it's never going to be cheaper. I just don't see the prices of these kinds of books from the early mid 60s ever dropping down to anything less than what they are right now. So this past week I bought an 8.5 of this book off eBay, um, and I'm waiting for it to show up. So
Oh, wow.
this is an important book. There are other books in the Golden Record reprint set. There's 4 books. There's Amazing Spider-Man. There's Fantastic Four #1, which I also have. There is an Avengers #4, and there is a Journey into Mystery #83, the first appearance of Thor. They're all good books to own. I think the opportunity, the window to buy these books at a reasonable price is shrinking because as those other books go up, these books are just great alternatives. For example, I don't have a Fantastic Four #1. I have a #2, #3, #4, #5. I wanted a #1, and to me, this is the most authentic #1 that I can afford. And it's the same thing with this Amazing Spider-Man book. It's I'm never going to be able to own the original, and this is the closest I'm going to come.
A lot of these Golden Record reprints were cutouts. Do you know what a cutout is?
Oh, yeah, cutouts is when they punch a hole in the, record to indicate that it's been returned.
Right, right, or overstock, and so they sell it at a cheap, a really cheap price to distributors who then do that notch so they can't return it later. Exactly. Um, a lot of them are cutouts, and so you still, as recently as 2 years ago, when you and I were at the California Comic Con here in California, we saw a sealed cutout copy of, was it this or Fantastic Four?
It was this one. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you found a sealed cutout copy, would you open it to get the book?
Oh my goodness, that's terrible. That's something. Yeah, I forgot to mention this book comes paired with an album, an
It's
actual
it's
playable
it's
album,
inside the album cover,
right?
sealed. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I would have to. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I would have to rescue the comic within that sealed. Um, but that's just me. I could see someone valuing it as a unit and never opening it and keeping it pristine. But I would have to open it and pull out the
I would also suggest if you're looking for one of these, check your local record stores that sell vinyl still. I remember seeing one of these golden record reprints at Amoeba Records here in Los Angeles years ago. So there are some non-traditional outlets you might want to try. And you might be surprised, if it's a really good record store. I don't think you're going to find it like, your local record exchange or something like that. But who knows? You might.
That's a genius idea. I
I
love it.
know. Thank you. My underrated book this week is The Star Brand number 12. I got to thinking about petty feuds in comic books with the creators, the editors. When we were talking about Xero, all of
Mm.
the inner scene office goings on and machinations and people sabotaging their own livelihoods just to prove a point.
Oh my goodness.
That brought me to two of my favorite creators, Jim Shooter and John Byrne, two peas in a pod that just loved each other. Look, they did not get along near the end there. Starbrand was created by former Marvel editor in chief Jim Shooter as part of the New Universe line. Now, the Starbrand was a guy named Ken Connell, who was pretty much a stand in for Jim Shooter. He looked like Jim Shooter with blonde hair. He was tall. He had Jim Shooter's nose. He lived in Pittsburgh, Shooter's hometown. It was basically, a total Mary Sue character. Like, all right, I'm going to write this if I was a superhero in the new universe. However, there was a problem when Jim Shooter was fired by Marvel. Someone had to take this very personal book to him over. And our little Canadian dude, John Byrne, raised his hand immediately. He said, I'll take over the Star Brand. I remember when this was announced, it was on the cover of the Comics Buyer's Guide, and I saw John Byrne was taking over Star Brand. And I thought to myself, holy poop, it's going to hit the fan. And I was not disappointed when this came out. Mr. Byrne definitely had some grudges to work out, so he got to work having Ken Connell start wearing a superhero costume, which was completely counter to the entire new universe motif. He shows up at a comic book convention to reveal himself to the world. And Roger Stern is in this issue as a character, another Marvel editor, and a couple of other comic book pros are in character in this issue. And they immediately start tearing apart Ken Connell's entire premise in the book. Like, well, wait, that costume doesn't hide your nose. And I can see that you're over 6 foot tall. You're really easy to identify, despite the fact, they just tore the whole premise of the book apart in the book.
Oh, man.
And it doesn't stop there. The issue ends with Ken Connell / Jim Shooter wanting to get rid of the Star Brand because it's become a curse in his mind. So he flies into space, attempts to transfer the Star Brand into a dumbbell. Real subtle there, John Byrne, with the dumbbell reference. And in the process, he completely annihilates Pittsburgh, Shooter's hometown. So not only did John Byrne want to pee all over this character, he destroyed Jim Shooter's hometown just to prove a point.
Oh, wow.
What an FU. It's legendary.
I would love to have an interview with a Shooter to hear
I
this.
want to get a Shooter on this podcast. I want to get John Byrne on this podcast. Because it seems so blinking petty.
Yeah.
I mean, this is work. I mean, they're creatives, they're artists. I get it. Emotions run high. But at the end of the day, first of all, okay, the editors let this go by. I mean, it's borderline
Yes.
slander and libel, whatever one in print is. Um, but a raw copy will run you anywhere from $2 to $6 on eBay. I highly recommend it. It does kind of lose a little bit of its oomph and impact if you have not read the prior 11 issues, where, Byrne just takes a total dump on those 11 issues.
Oh, wow.
It is brutal. It did not disappoint. Now, after this, you had the pit, which was the
Mhm.
fallout from Pittsburgh being destroyed. And, Star Brand limps along for another 7 issues, but it just wasn't the same after issue 12. It was like, I made my point. I proved my point. Oh, I still have to write this book. Okay, fine.
Oh man, oh boy, it would be interesting to know that dynamic in person.
Well, it's like this. Okay, John Byrne. If you have problems with everybody, maybe everybody's not the problem. I'm just saying. Let's have him on the podcast and hash it out.
Yep, I would love to.
It'll never happen. All right, that is going to wrap it up for us this week. Richard, where can they find us?
They can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Bronze and Modern Gods, or the website bronzeandmoderngods.com.
And thanks, everybody. We will see you next time.
Yep, thank you, everybody.